Thank you for joining the podcast, Mr. Jimmy.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I recently finished a conversation with the current mayor, Hurley Marsh, and it was really great to get an update on the current happenings of Dayton and the plans of the city. Now, because of your experience, um, I am fascinated to hear about the past plans of Dayton and how we got to where we are, not just where we're going. So why don't you start off maybe by telling me how you came to be in Dayton, and then we can jump into the role that you played in Dayton leadership from there.
Okay, well, Justice, professionally, my first involvement with Dayton city government and Ray County government was probably 1968. After I came out of the service, I went to work for the state of Tennessee as a urban planner, a city planner, and finished my education and worked. And I was assigned to the city of Dayton and to Ray County as an urban planner. Our organization with the state was a regional planning office that served 15 counties in the southeast portion of Tennessee. Well, Dayton, because I knew as a young lad growing up, was always an attraction to me. And in 1968, I was assigned to the city of Dayton and served as the Dayton city planner from 1968 to 1976. During that time, as a planner, we developed a lot of long-term plans for the city, neighborhood analyses, community facility studies, land use plans, housing studies, and the Planning Commission, the Dayton Planning Commission, and the Dayton City Council used those plans for years, and they were updated usually about every 5 years as the guiding elements for the growth of the city. Transportation plan. I remember we did a transportation plan. So those things gave me a good background to the city and its infrastructure, its facilities, and things of that nature. In 1976, I decided to get out of planning and direct my career more toward public administration. And I was offered the job as city manager in Spring City, Tennessee, and spent a year there. And then while I was in Spring City, Mayor Jimmy Cunningham came to me and asked me if I would be interested in the city manager position in Dayton.
That's the Dayton mayor, Jimmy.
The Dayton mayor at the time, and I of course said yes, that I would. And so then I was offered that post, and I held a post as city manager from 1977 to 1984-85, about 7 years. And of course, with that, and with the planning elements that we had done, I had a pretty good idea as to what our city fathers wanted as far as growth of the city physically and also the improvements of the infrastructure, and that included water, sewer, power, because we had power, and transportation. So we did that. I worked for two different mayors, Mr. Mayor Cunningham, who still lives in Dayton and in the Edgewater community. Mr. Wendell Brown succeeded Jimmy Cunningham and served two terms, and I worked for Mayor Brown. Mayor Brown actually owned a hardware store on the corner, right on Main Street there. So I have lots of friends, lots of old friends, and new friends that are leaders or were leaders. Mayor Marsh, who I know today, he may not remember me, but I remember when Hurley worked for the post office. He was a postal carrier, so yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, so
So,
yeah.
and to complete the arc, because you're kind of introducing yourself and your story. So, after you served as the city planner for Spring City, you served as the city planner for Dayton for how many years total?
Seven, I believe, as city planner from '68 to '76. So that would have been 8 years as city planner, and then 7 years as city manager for Dayton.
Right. And city planner, you were over what area?
The Dayton has a regional planning commission. It actually extends, or it did at that time, beyond the corporate limits. It was a regional planning commission, and it was basically made up of the corporate limits of the city of Dayton and a region of 5 miles outside the corporate limits, and that was the planning region for the city of Dayton.
So you served as the planner for the city and a region outside of the city, but that was it for your region. For some reason, I thought that it was other cities as well. It was just Dayton and
No,
basically the greater Dayton area. Is that
no,
right?
well, no, because I had more than Dayton as a community that I served.
Okay, that's what
I
I mean.
was I was city manager for the city of Spring City, for the town of Spring City. During this same time,
Oh, okay, at the same
I
time.
was also the city planner for the Ray County unincorporated area at the same time.
Mm,
So
gotcha.
my history with Ray County and Dayton and Spring City goes back many, many years.
Hmm. And after, would you say your final official role in Ray County was that the city manager at Dayton?
Yes.
And then you moved to
Moved to Loudon, Tennessee as city manager there, and served up there 4 years. Then came back to Dayton because we still owned a home here, and went to work in private industry here, and did that for a few years before moving to Georgia.
gotcha. Where that's where you currently live,
Yes.
Georgia. Well, so establishing that arc, I want to go back. Where are you from? I don't know if we caught where you're from originally. It was Pikeville.
I was born and raised in Bledsoe County, Tennessee, Pikeville. Graduated from Bledsoe County High School in 1964. The first football coach that Ray County had, John Boynton, that was just honored here a couple of weeks ago, was a classmate and a teammate. Yeah. So,
I heard a really funny story about you and your dad coming to Dayton selling vegetables. You want to tell that story?
well, yeah, that I was a young lad, probably 12, 13 years old, and lived on a farm, and we grew vegetables. and we would sell those vegetables to grocery stores or farmers markets. And if we had leftover vegetables, usually that happened on a Saturday, then we would drive across the mountain from Pikeville to Dayton, Tennessee to try to finish selling our vegetables. And I guess the thing that sticks out in my mind the most on the street where City Hall sits today was called Sand Street, and it was literally sand. It was sand. It wasn't paved at all. And we turned the corner. We were headed to a farmer's market that sat on Railroad Street. And when we turned the corner, there were two gentlemen standing out in the middle of the street with guns drawn. And my dad turned our old pickup truck around in the middle of the street and said, "Son, this is not where we need to be today." And so we headed back across the mountain. But it's just an example of the times. I mean, during those times, not only Dayton but in other places, it was pretty rough country, and a lot of lawlessness and lack of law enforcement and things like that. It was just a way of life.
So you saw Dayton needed help, so you started studying city planning and everything like that. So kind of paint the picture for me. You're just starting city planning. You're helping out Spring City and Dayton. What would be visibly different to people now if they drove through? Like, what are the perhaps the landmarks or just the ways of life that we take for granted that was just totally different back then?
Well, let me first say that I'm proud to see when I come back and visit my family who still live here. What I'm proud to see is that the leadership of the county and of the city has kept some of those ideas and those visions that we had back in those years. They've kept those things in mind, and they have preserved and continue to preserve a lot of the heritage that we have. The Ray County Courthouse is one of my fondest memories because I was a city planner at the time that the courthouse was placed on the National Register for historical places, and the actual renovation started while in my latter years as city planner, and then my first years as city manager. And Mr. Dan Wade was the county executive that oversaw a lot of that. But we, the city, we were involved in it because most of the infrastructure that supports the courthouse, the streets and the sidewalks and water, sewer, and things of that nature, we provided. We, the city, provided. So we were directly involved. The city was directly involved in the renovation and what you see today as the courthouse being restored, the museum in the basement, the institution of the annual Scopes trial that is still held, I think, in the courtroom where it actually occurred. So that kind of heritage, I mean, I'm proud to see that it's being carried on. From a future standpoint, the most prevalent thing is that I see the growth both north and south on along 27. Again, I was involved in some of the planning of the actual four laning of 27. Mr. Gene Elzey, we served on a committee that actually planned that project for some 10 years before the state legislature, with Mr. Elzey's leadership, funded the project, and we could actually start construction. And that highway was improved actually from Chattanooga, Hamilton County, all the way through Ray County.
Because previously it was just a small
Two-lane,
two-lane.
two-lane highway. Yeah.
And that's the same highway that would have gone through downtown Dayton, or was it already the bypass?
Well, there was already a bypass in Dayton that was built years before. But before the bypass, U.S. Highway 27 actually traveled right now what we call Market Street.
Mm-hmm.
And the bypass was built later, but it stopped short on the south end of the city and the north end, and now it's a four-lane highway all the way to probably Roane County, all the way through Spring City at least.
So when you first got to work, what were the big projects that you started working on right away?
Well, one of the, I guess the project that sticks out the most, and it was one of the projects that our city council wanted done, and that was a revitalization of, I think it was 3 or 4 blocks of the downtown Market Street area. If you can imagine, and you'll see some of the old photographs, that street was actually narrower than it is today, and there was very limited on-street parking. And we were able to secure what was called a community development block grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to completely revitalize. That included sidewalks, street lights, street signals.
Were there not sidewalks?
Very narrow, probably about half the width of this table. Not anything like what you see today, and probably needs to be improved today. But that project was very challenging because from a logistics standpoint, we had to keep the businesses in mind and keep the businesses open because they were, those businesses were the heartbeat of the city. So we came up with the idea, and Mayor Cunningham and the city council and our consulting engineers decided that we would do the project at night only. And so portable lights were brought in. Businesses shut down at 5 o'clock, and the contractors started work, and they would work until 7 o'clock the next morning or whatever, and then they shut down and the businesses opened back up. But those are the kinds of logistic problems that you get into, and especially in a very tight downtown area. But I'm proud to see that project is still lives, and I think the traffic signals are still some of the lights that I installed.
I believe you. This is actually a perfect time for this idea that I've been. You can tell me if this is a terrible idea. Uh, but I was in Pikeville, and Pikeville has a really wide downtown strip. There's ample room for parking on both sides, trees, wide sidewalks, wide enough for patio spaces for, restaurants and stuff like that. And I started thinking about Dayton, and I realized we just don't even have space for that. And I was wondering if a potential solution could be to eliminate the two-way street, make it one way, one lane in the middle with diagonal parking down either side. Then you could widen the sidewalks and maybe even have islands for landscaping. Does that make sense? So then all of a sudden down the main strip market, and you would start this maybe at the old the community bank down to FB Bank, something like that. Then you could, you'd look down the main strip, wider sidewalks, patios for stores, and trees, which do a huge amount. I'm sure this is, all this. Is that a terrible idea? It's okay if it is.
It's not a terrible idea, and it's not one of the things that you have to be concerned about is you've got to be concerned about commerce, and maintaining that. I can tell you that years ago, I remember the transportation plan. We looked at making Market Street one way and in one direction, and Railroad Street one way in the opposite direction, because you've got to have the traffic to be able to traverse both north and south. But it's not a terrible idea. It's a very challenging idea,
from a logistics standpoint,
from
with
a
businesses.
logistics and from a whether or not it would be popular for those businesses,
Right.
because they rely on that. And that was what we were faced with when we decided to do the downtown improvement project back in 77 and 80. That project went on for 2 years. Downtown was basically, torn up for that long a time. But we were able to do it with a contractor that was willing to work during the night, and thanks to our businesses, they were willing to put up with the inconvenience and things in order to see the better product that there is today. But one of the things that I've learned in my 50 years, I've been in planning and public administration, just probably longer than you are old. But communities are viable, growing organisms. They never stop. And the challenge that leadership has is you've always got to be thinking ahead and thinking forward. Some of the improvements that I've seen since I left, I commend the leadership for what they've done. But that's not to say that more isn't needed. And as the community grows and the demographics change, more young people and children and things like that, then you've got to be able to provide facilities for them. But that's what the challenge is. And what I love about planning is that planning gives you a roadmap, so to speak, and if people pay attention to that roadmap, and there's going to be times when they have to take detours, but if they keep that vision and that mission in mind, then you've got a nice, healthy, vibrant community.
I want to. The philosophy of central planning is really interesting because what you have here is, I think of Ray County as a freedom loving group of people. We really like to be able to kind of do whatever we want for the most part. And one of the challenges that comes in central planning a small rural freedom loving town is a conflict of, not a conflict, but your philosophy of individual freedom butts up with the need for a central plan.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know where you stand philosophically on the needs of the one versus the needs of the many and things like this. But I've found that in arguing for different elements of central planning, you butt into this idea of like, hey, I believe in, as much freedom as is possible, which just by definition bumps against a central plan. So how do you work that out philosophically?
Well, it's a compromise. You know, what you have to do is you have to take those ideals and you have to take the sentiments of the community, and you have to find a way to compromise. You may not be able to get 100%, and that's what you run into every day. And it doesn't matter if it's in a small town like Dayton or New York City, Chattanooga, Nashville. It's a compromise between the two, and what planners learn. I consider myself a practical planner. I was taught and ran into what I call ivory towered planners. Ivory towered planners are planners that can't take what they've been taught and what they've learned and go and apply it to a community.
Contextualize it.
Yeah, what they're more ideological, and that's one of the arguments that I've had. I remember having with college professors and things like that, in debates that we would have. It's always nice to say, "Oh, well, this is the way you're supposed to do it," but get out there and try to apply it in a community. And that's the problem that you have. But if you always recognize that good planning and good community uh, is a compromise. Always you're compromising between the two. And sometimes your ideas will win and sometimes they won't. But never lose sight of that. And I've had times where I could go back in communities and I could say to some of those opposing ideas, I told you so.
Well,
So
can you give some examples of lack of planning and how that just leads to foibles, or even if you can contextualize it to Dayton, issues of either under planning, lack of foresight, stuff like that.
well, as I said, it's communities are they're living beings almost. They're ever changing, and what you have is you're always trying to stay ahead of the curve. You're always trying to be out front there, and uh, yeah, there's things that I could see mistakes that I've made, and I've made plenty of them. But one of the things that I see, and it's an asset of the city of Dayton, and but the Highway 27 corridor. One of the things that you have is you have an intrusion of commercial establishments and traffic uh, movements that sometimes are conflicting. What what would have been nice is that if you had had parallel ways, limited access streets to those commercial establishments. And what you'll find, Justice, in any community, I don't care where it is, the development always follows the infrastructure. If you build a good street, or if you lay a good water line, sewer line, or power, or whatever, development will come. It's like a magnet because that's what makes America what we are. And so what we've always got to be conscious of is that when that development comes, are we ready for it? Are we ready for it, or are we going to take the time and we're going to try to avoid future problems, tenure problems, and things like that for traffic or for water, for sewer, whatever it might be. And that those are the kinds of things that planners and managers, public administrators, public officials, they're always trying to do that, as well as take care of the day to day needs of the citizenry and of the facilities and things like that. So that's what makes it so challenging, you know.
Uh, what are the most notable things that you accomplished during your tenure at Dayton?
The first cable television that came to Dayton, Tennessee, we brought it here.
Mm.
Mayor Cunningham, thanks to him and some people that he knew, uh, Robert Kirk Walker, who was at the time the mayor of Chattanooga, uh, they were installing cable television at the time, and so because we had power, uh, we uh, we thought that would be nice for Dayton.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, the equipment that we're doing this podcast on today, without that initial cable television, uh, you wouldn't be doing it, you
Mm.
know. And that was probably in the early '80s. We first brought it to just the city of Dayton, and everyone that saw it liked it. And then there was the pressure of, well, we wanted outside the city, and we wanted. Then it grew into the county and into Spring City, and uh, I remember the gentleman that owned the company that he took a big chance, a big risk uh, to introduce cable here. A fellow by the name of Boyce Dooley. Uh, but yeah, we introduced cable television not only to the city of Dayton, but to the entire Ray County area.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And I know while you were working with the city, you said you did a lot of research. You put together multiple plans that you kind of left with the city to be implemented.
Oh, sure. We one of the things that we did is we developed uh, plans, community facilities plans. Community facilities would include fire, police, recreation, anything in that nature. Uh, the police station that you see today,
That was included in your
that
plan.
that was included in the plan. The fire station, the what used to be the library that is now police, and Mr. Clyde Roddy, who is my predecessor. Uh, I'm proud to see that there is a library named after him
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those a lot of the things that you see, the four ball complex down next to the city school, that was a new concept to actually do four fields in a cloverleaf fashion with one concession stand, press box, and everything. And I'm proud to say that we uh, we built that, and as a matter of fact, a local contractor that is still in business today here was a part of that. So yeah, there's lots of things that I could. The
Well, I
courthouse,
want to hear. Yeah, the courthouse and
the courthouse. I mean, yeah, you can't imagine what Mr. Dan Wade went through. I mean, basically the courthouse that you see today, it was gutted on the inside and basically the exterior walls, and it was restored. The courtroom where that is so famous, the museum in the basement. I mean, those kinds of things that happened in the late 80s and or early 80s and late 70s. I mean, people are still enjoying today. The as a planner, in my role as a planner, I can remember when the two high schools, Spring City and Dayton Ray Central, uh, the there was a merger, and there was a lot of gnashing of teeth and things like that because they were arch rivals. But site was picked in Evansville, and one of the critical things that that site needed was water, public water. And so I'm happy to say that the city of Dayton had the capacity, the excess capacity of water to be able to extend water up Highway 27 all the way to what we think of as the Ray County campus today. And a utility district was formed that serves that campus today. We also another utility district that was created was on Dayton Mountain out there that we extended water out there. So I mean, there's just as I could probably go on for days,
about all the things.
about all of the things and the changes. But I'm proud of the groundwork that we laid and my predecessors and my successors afterwards. I mean, so much of the improvements that I see coming to fruition were thought about and planned for 20 years ago,
Mm.
30 years ago. And that's what planning is. Community planning. You've got to you can't ever stop. You've got to keep continuing uh, that curve out in front of your community uh, because if it catches you, then you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm. What do you think present? What are the challenges that Dayton presents uniquely to a planner or just to local leadership? Now that you're not involved politically here, I'd love your frank take on what we're dealing with.
Well, I the you're always challenged by terrain. You're always challenged by physical landscape things. one of the things I don't think it is. I think it's actually an asset for Dayton is the fact that we are a part of the Tennessee Valley Authority, and we get to enjoy the water facilities that we have here, and I'm proud to see that Dayton and Ray County is becoming nationally known as an angler capital, for sports fishing and things of that nature. But the challenges that you have, Justice, is keeping that infrastructure well maintained and
Ahead of the
looking
curve.
and ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Exactly. What I see happening at the sewage treatment plant today, and it happened to us. We had a water treatment plant expansion that went on, and the sewage treatment plant. Those kinds of things you've got to always stay ahead of the curve because the demand, either the demand is here or it's very short coming to
Hmm.
you, and so that those are the staying ahead of that curve is the biggest challenge that any political leader or administrative leader has is to take care of the day-to-day things and the day-to-day citizens' needs, but at the same time be looking to the future.
Because I imagine that's difficult because it brings a very high price tag and it's very boring. As far as sewer, it's like no one rushes home and talks about the
Well,
progress of the new
you
sewer plant.
well,
Well, I know
well
you
that
would.
that is true. But if you didn't have it,
You would suddenly.
you would suddenly
Yeah.
it would suddenly come to you. But
But
with
a good politician who stays ahead of it
mhm.
wouldn't be as celebrated as the bad politician would be hated if it fell apart.
Well,
So
and
in some
that's
senses, it doesn't
yeah,
come
and
with a proportionate
that's the
reward.
challenge that community leaders have
Hmm.
is making its citizens aware of, hey, yeah, it sounds bad today, but in 2 years, 3 years, and 5 years from now, you won't think it's such a bad idea.
Right.
Uh,
And these are the basic things. Like I know, whenever I think of community planning, I guess I'm more visual. I think of like the playgrounds and stuff, and that's a part of it. But we're talking about the building blocks. I keep hearing this not just from you, but also from Hurley and other people involved in leadership. You're talking about water, sewer, electricity. Like,
transportation.
yeah.
Those are the yeah. Any leader will tell you those are the building blocks.
What do you mean
That's
by,
what
transportation?
your streets, your rail. You've always got to be looking at the way you can improve that street transportation program, whether it's U.S. Highway 27 or if it's Market Street or
Taking Market Street down to one
you've
lane,
you've
or
all yeah you've always got to be looking at those things,
yeah.
and it's a
You
challenge.
you mentioned at the very beginning of this interview, living in Pikeville, you were attracted to Dayton, and you ended up coming here to live and work. What attracted you to Dayton, and what attracts so many people to Dayton? What is it?
Well, I'm a Tennessee Valley boy, and Dayton was always an attraction. Those of us that grew up in Pikeville in those days, we always had an admiration for Dayton because Dayton was uh, more progressive. Oh yeah,
In what do you mean by that?
yeah. I mean, Dayton had more things to offer
Mm.
for young people and things like that, and then in my professional life, it was an easy fit for me when I was assigned as a city planner to Dayton and Ray County and to Spring City because it was like coming home for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you see the future of Dayton looking like if it becomes the best version of itself it can be? As you drive through and as you see what it has become, even since the '60s and '70s, since you've been investing in it, what do you see as the
Well,
future?
let me say this. One of the things that I hope that we don't uh, lose uh, sight of is that what attracts us is that small town, close knit, uh, caring neighbors caring about neighbors, that kind of community from a moral and philosophical standpoint. From the physical standpoint, I think as long as you've got the good sound building blocks, water, sewer, transportation, rail, those kinds of things. But what you are constantly having to concern yourself with is that with growth. When growth occurs, what attracts people to a community are those kinds of things. But the more attraction that we have, the more that we lose,
Mm,
unless we're able to accept and indoctrinate those newcomers
mm,
to that small town way of life.
mm-hmm.
That's what people love. That's what they want to come back to. And, so that I think that's the biggest challenge. I know the community that I serve now and work in Georgia, that is our biggest challenge, is because we are an attraction to so many people that those people, although we want to welcome them and we want to uh, uh, make them a part of the community, sometimes they want to bring the ideas that they came from
Mm-hmm.
to the community, and the community will resent that
Mm.
because what you're trying to do then is make us something that we weren't.
Well, that you just left.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
There's a reason this is like it. There's a reason the community that you desire now is like it is.
Yes,
And we've been doing this for a while. And
and we've been doing it for a while.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored that you would even think about it. But yeah, and I have the one of the things that I tell my grandchildren and my children is that what what I hope that we do, and Mayor Marsh, I hope we leave Dayton or whatever community in a better condition than it was when we got there, and that we leave something to the younger generations, to you younger generations coming on, that you can build on and make better. We don't have the answers to everything. You have the challenge of making what we've started even better.
Hmm.
You know.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I want to have this podcast because there's so little. There aren't very many places to share ideas, to learn from the past, to recognize where Dayton's come from a planning perspective, from a history perspective, and get everyone at the same table. Now, obviously, they're not actually here physically, but to get city leadership and people who've been in leadership in the past, and not just leadership, but other community roles and business people. And if we can, I know we'll never all agree on anything, but if we can generally come up with what is the
Well,
best version of Dayton, then maybe we can work
one of
together
the
toward it.
things, Justice, that we used to do here And I'm sure they still do it to a certain degree. Maybe different leaders have different ideas. We used to have what we call town hall meetings, and we would have and the I remember the county uh, when I was working with them, they would have meetings out in the county in the communities. Uh, Man, it for a while we were having town hall meetings, probably at least once a month, just
Mm,
for as a communication to exchange ideas, for city leaders to tell the community what they've got in mind and what they're doing and things like that, and also to get feedback from the
mm-hmm,
citizenry.
mm,
I think that's an important thing is to always keep those lines of communication open. You know, politicians, I have the utmost respect for them because they usually don't get the praise when they do something right.
mm-hmm.
But if they do it wrong, man, the telephone rings off the hook or
Exactly.
whatever. So it's always good to keep those town hall meetings or community meetings just to exchange ideas and to communicate with each other.
I think that's a great idea. Well, I have a feeling you might be back on because I think that you probably have enough stories and history and knowledge of Ray County and Dayton, Tennessee, and just background knowledge of building the city. I expect that we might have to hang out again. So,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
All right.